This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and this is episode 648 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by FanDuel. Thanks for tuning in. I took my first L of the season this week. After saying Rob Gronkowski was one of my highest rostered players in best ball drafts, after taking him in a lot of drafts, he announced his retirement. And I'm tilting. I said this was a possibility, that this was in his range of outcomes. I was hoping it wouldn't happen, obviously, but I knew that it could happen. And that's why I'm not actually that upset. This is a good time and a good example to share with anyone new to the show how I think about fantasy football. And how I think about fantasy football is that if I believe I was logical at the time, if I believe my stance on a player or a strategy was baked in logic, I can't be that upset when a result doesn't end up in my favor. And with Gronk, yeah, the result sucks. I don't want him to retire, but I recognize the risk-reward nature to his situation, and I went with that risk, knowing the reward was strong. And don't give me the maybe Gronk will come back stuff. Yeah, maybe he will come back, but this is still an L, because his ADP is going to drop, and the entire point of drafting in June is to get values on players. It's to draft players who end up seeing an increase in ADP as the summer rolls on. This isn't a place where I sit and defend bad results. Bad results happen. As long as I feel good about my process, I feel okay about those bad results. And I hope you guys feel the same way. Now, before getting into the questions this week, because this is a mailbag show, remember that there's no better time than today to sign up for FanDuel Fantasy. For users who have yet to make a deposit on FanDuel Fantasy, you can deposit today to receive 2 free entries. All you have to do is deposit a minimum of $10 in your FanDuel DFS account, and you'll be instantly rewarded with 2 free vouchers. It's a limited time offer, so be sure to deposit now and play for free. Head over to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. The first question this week is from @SuaveSwaverson. It says, with the vacated targets in Tampa, Antonio Brown's gone, Gronk uncertain, and Godwin likely to miss time, do you think it's a more likely outcome that Tampa offense has 2 fantasy viable receivers, or Mike Evans goes nuclear this year? Okay, so I've seen a lot of analysis this week from different analysts where they're sort of fitting the Buccaneers' current personnel into last year's offense. And it's kind of driving me nuts. The Buccaneers will not have the same offense this year as they did last year. Tom Brady threw the ball 719 times last year, people. They had the 5th highest pass rate since 2011. They scored the 13th most touchdowns per game in a season since that time, too. Now they don't have Antonio Brown. Chris Godwin isn't going to be ready to start the season. You're replacing Rob Gronkowski with Cameron Brate, and they have inexperience outside of Brate at tight end. The NFC is weak, so Tampa Bay can still do their thing. But this offense is going to be different, at least from a projection standpoint. Mike Evans is the one who matters most there, though. My buddy Rich Rebar @LordReebs on Twitter, he sent out a nice little chart this week showing how Tom Brady's done with and without some of his weapons in Tampa Bay. And the key piece is Mike Evans. When Mike Evans has been out, he's had his lowest yards per attempt rate and touchdown rate. I think Evans should be awesome as a result. I'm all about taking Mike Evans in redraft. And I don't mind Russell Gage either, but we do know there's a slightly lower hit rate for middle round wide receivers with early round wide receiver teammates. It's not like it is at running back, but it's still something to keep in mind. Both guys are fine to draft at ADP, but I've got a feeling that someone like Cameron Brate, that his ADP is about to skyrocket. People are going to project him like he's playing in last year's offense, and that's a mistake. I mean, even last year, Gronk missed weeks 4 through 7. Brate ranked no higher than 28th in weekly tight end scoring during those 4 games. He had a high of 5.6 PPR points. Yes, O.J. Howard was there, and he's no longer there. But Brate still ran 104 routes during that stretch. O.J. Howard had 63. Brate was 11th in the NFL in routes run over that time frame, according to PFF. And he averaged a little over 3 PPR points per game. Mike Evans, Russell Gage, that's probably the exposure that I want in this offense, assuming Brate's ADP does rise a whole lot. This next question is from Twitter. It's from @BaileyGriffin75 and says, you talked about rookie wide receivers being better later in the season and that drafting and holding was often a good idea. But how do you evaluate the opportunity cost of their bench spots that we could be using for waiver wire breakouts or injuries/bye week fill-ins earlier in the season? Yeah, look, there's no one single way to answer this question because you want to treat things player by player. How one rookie wide receiver's journey is going isn't the same as another. But I don't want people to walk away from that episode earlier this week with the thought that rookie wide receivers are only good because of their second half numbers. The top tier rookies are generally good values throughout the season, but they do get better as the season goes on. That next group though, the rookies who go picks 100 to 150, they still have almost a 50% hit rate when looking at season-long numbers, just in terms of exceeding expectation. So it's not like they've been bad values overall or across an entire season. And by the way, I talked about all of this on Monday's episode. That's why this is being asked. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to that right now. But if the argument is that those season-long numbers still include second-half numbers, so the numbers are skewed because of those second-half numbers, I'd push back and say that the exact same thing can happen with veteran players too. Scoring well during one half of the season is not unique to rookies. It's just that the rookies in that 100 to 150 range have average hit rates, and those hit rates are then enhanced during the second half of the season. The majority of players that you get in your fantasy draft after pick 100, they're high variance players. You're not going to know their outcomes right away. So you're holding on to a lot of players like that on your bench, not just those types of rookies. And to this point, I got a question from @Steven0128 this week that said, you talked about how rookies, especially after pick 100, get off to slow starts. Considering that, would it be better to target them in a trade or after they're dropped? I remember St. Brown and Moore both being waiver targets last year. Yeah, sure. The reason I do these studies is that so you can morph these ideas for your specific league. Some leagues are deeper, where you don't have a fruitful waiver wire. Some are shallower. I think in most leagues, you probably can get away with not drafting some of these rookie wide receivers. But just be prepared to beat your league mates with them on the waiver wire. You're just going to be more aware than your league mates will about what these rookies can do for your team down the stretch. I don't really try to enter a season, though, with the thought that I'm going to just trade my way to a championship. I'd rather set myself up for success through the draft and through things that I can control. But yes, as the season goes on, that's when you can definitely start adding guys off the waiver wire or trading for them if you want to. The point of that study was to show two things. Number one, that rookie wide receivers are probably undervalued in your redraft leagues. And then number two, that the non-elite rookie wide receivers will almost definitely improve as a group as the season goes on. And that's a powerful thing to know. This next question is from Patreon. It's from Franco. It says, hey JJ, love the show and all the work that you do. With the tendency of second-year receivers having an increase in production from their rookie year, and with the plentiful amount of second-year guys available this year, Chase, Waddle, Elijah, and Devontae to name a few, are there any that you are actively avoiding? So I asked Franco if he was asking this question in relation to Dynasty or Redraft, and he said Redraft. So let's talk season-long here. This is going to be a pretty annoying answer, but I actually think the second-year receivers are being drafted in the right spots right now. That includes Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase, two guys going earlier than the middle rounds. And that also includes Amon-Ra St. Brown, who people seem to hate. I think he's fine in his ADP given the ceiling that he showed down the stretch last year and what we've seen from second-year team wide receiver ones through the years. And that's team wide receiver ones via ADP. I admittedly do have a little hesitation with Devontae Smith given A.J. Brown's ADP and how people are viewing him, and how the market is generally right when it comes to middle round wide receivers who have teammates getting drafted early. But age and career trajectory trump that kind of analysis. And Devontae Smith is good. My model likes Devontae Smith, so he's not someone that I'm actively fading. And it's not like the borderline guys are being boosted in the market either. Like I sort of expected people to really like Rondale Moore this year. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. People loved Moore coming out. But he's going after Michael Gallup right now. Friend of the show, Edwin Porras from Fantasy Points, who's a doctor of physical therapy, he's not optimistic that Gallup is going to even play in September. I really have no issue with any of the second-year guys. Maybe it's because I know how well they end up hitting, but if you're playing in a handful of leagues, you'll probably want some exposure to each of them. It's a talented group. This next question is also from Patreon, and it's from Josh. I think I have a Lazard/Tunyon problem, snatching them up at ADP wherever I can. Am I crazy like a fox or just plain crazy? love the ADP, and trying to chase the Rodgers chemistry. I've bought into Allen Lazard more and more over the last couple of months, so I'm definitely on board there. One of the interesting things with middle round breakouts in age is that having a 5th or 6th year wide receiver emerge and become a value from that ADP range, it's not that uncommon. I talk about that in my draft guide, which is publishing in less than 10 days, by the way. But I show some of the math behind all of that and how a player like Allen Lazard really exceeding expectation would not be a surprise. I'm not as into Robert Tonyan, though. I totally understand the lack of competition there, but I almost feel like people forget that he tore his ACL halfway through last season. And even if he's healthy, it's not like he's this locked-in top 7 or 8 tight end. And he's not being drafted far from that typically. I just like other tight ends more at value, like Cole Kmet or Irv Smith or even Albert O. So I'm in on Lazard. I'm not as in on Robert Tonyan. The next question is another one about an Aaron Rodgers receiver, and it's from @BobForest3, and it says, why does the community hate Amari Rodgers? He's a 2nd-year wide receiver that should break out according to his ambiguous situation. Love the show. Thanks. So keep in mind that there's a difference between meeting some of the criteria that I lay out there on this show for breakouts and having good odds of breaking out. Only about 24% of wide receivers exceed ADP expectation by 3 or more points. Players who meet some of the criteria, some of the ambiguous wide receiver criteria, they still won't break out. Not only that, but Green Bay's got other wide receivers on that team that you can throw darts at that also are part of this ambiguous situation. They've got 2 rookie wide receivers, for example. So it makes Amari Rodgers sort of not the obvious go-to pick. I'm not that into Amari Rodgers because I didn't think he was that good of a prospect. He was fine. And he didn't do anything as a rookie when he definitely had a chance to do something. If the talent was there, he would have found the field more. But Rodgers had a 76th percentile score in my prospect model with a 0% draft capital delta. So he was totally average. He got drafted where he probably should have gotten drafted. And then his year 2 score looks a lot worse because he didn't do anything as a rookie. That's usually not a good sign. If you want to get some shares in the last rounds of best ball drafts, there are worse picks to make. I won't fault you for that. But that's the reason that people aren't hyping him up. There's a correlation between successful wide receivers in the NFL and how well they did as rookies. And Rodgers just didn't do that much as a first-year player. The last question this week is a little bit different, but it's from @Budzino1. It says, JJ, if we're all competing for the top prizes in something like best ball, why are the top analysts so inclined to share who they're on and where they like those players? I'm sure not all secrets are being revealed, but sounds like a lot of chalk in essence. Or is that just a negative view? So you're basically asking why people tout. Why are there even analysts when those same analysts are hypothetically playing the game against people they're giving advice to? Wouldn't they just want the advantage all to themselves? Well, think about the alternative. The alternative here is that you would then just have to play fantasy football full time. If I wasn't sharing any of my advice, then I would have to make a living somehow. And there are some people who do that. There are DFS pros. There are people who play in an insane number of high stakes leagues. And some of them can make a good living doing that. That's just not for me. I know that my mental state can't handle that. And it's not that I think that I'm a bad player. I just would rather make my living by talking on this podcast and creating guides and doing research for people to read. I really enjoy talking to an audience about fantasy football. It's a lot of fun. If I were to hold back and not, quote, reveal my secrets, then I'd be doing you a disservice. Not only that, but it's not like one analyst is going to dramatically move the market. There's so much fantasy football content out there. It's to the point where you can find articles and analysis that argues either side of some discussion. I like Kadarius Toney this year, but there are plenty of analysts who don't. I don't like getting middle round tight ends. Plenty of analysts do. So basically, the effect of me sharing who I like and don't like, it's pretty small. The effect is not that dramatic. Like at the end of the day, me saying to draft Kadarius Toney a few weeks ago in an email blast, maybe there's a chance it makes a player less of a value, but it's not like it's shifting the equation so much that I all of a sudden ruined everything for myself. And it's just one player. I could still be wrong about that player. Not only that, but part of being good at this is being reactive and adjusting. Even if that did happen, even if I somehow was able to move the market, then I would adjust. I'd react. It's not like I'm incapable of winning something or doing well in some public event because I'm giving out information and talking strategy on my podcast. The other thing to remember with this is that there are just different stakes. Someone who plays for a living, their stakes are pretty direct. If they have a bad year, they don't make money. If their picks are bad, they don't make money. For me, if I give bad advice, then I lose audience. People stop listening to me. And when people stop listening to me, I make less money. I'm not able to make a living. I think that gets lost sometimes with this. I want to be right and help you guys out because yes, it's fun. I like when people who listen and read my content, I like when they do well. But also, I want you to come back and keep listening. I want to be able to continue doing this as my job. And that pushes me to be as good as I possibly can be every single time I turn on the mic. I give a lot of credit to people who can play for a living. I know a lot of them, and they're great people too. They're very appreciative of what I do, and I'm appreciative of what they do. It's just that when it comes to making my living, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I know this is what I enjoy doing. I'm not going to change that because I want to make money playing fantasy football. So I'm transparent about everything because you deserve that. I think the more open and honest I am about my process and my analysis, the better this entire experience is for everyone. That's going to do it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you've yet subscribed to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LateRoundQB. And again, check out lateround.com. You can pre-order the Late Round Draft Guide right now and get it to your inbox right when it launches on July 1st. The guide talks through draft strategy for 2022 season-long leagues, and I give you my favorite targets, avoids, late round darts, and more. It's updated weekly from July 1st through August. So you'll have my up-to-date thoughts on things every single week. Pre-order it right now for $19.99 before it goes to $24.99 on July 1st. I'm putting a ton of effort into this thing. I think you're going to really like it. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you have a great weekend.